Allow me to talk about Mercy Amba Oduyoye. I want to talk about her life as a great woman scholar and the founder of African women's theology. Great modern scholar of our times, especially in religious studies and theology, especially women theology. I want us to think of her as a person. Who is she? What did she achieve? What are some of her publications? What are some of the messages in her works? I start by saying she is a very great person. So Mercy Amba Oduyoye ni Yamoa was born on 21st October 1934 in a place in Ghana called Asamankese. She got married to a Nigerian by name Andeyoyin Modupe Oduyoye, an Anglican Christian when she herself was a Methodist. That was in 1968 when she married Odupe Oduyoye. We like to call him Odupe Oduyoye, but his full name is Adedoyin Modupe Oduyoye. Now, Mercy, a Methodist Christian, began her schooling at a place called Mofrotulo, Kumasi, Ghana, between 1944 to 1948. And she later joined Achimota School, Accra, Ghana, between 1949 and 1952. Between 1953 to 54, she studied at Kumasi College of Technology, now University of Kumasi. She sat for her post-secondary certificate of education, that is Teacher Certificate A, for Ministry of Education of Ghana in 1954. She was in the University of Ghana, Legon, Accra, in 1959 to 1963, where she got a Bachelor of Arts honors in religious studies. Between 1965 and 1969, Mercy Amba Oduyoye, was studying at the University of Cambridge, UK. Here, she got her BA Honors in theology, and her specialty was in Tripos Part 3 Dogmatics, that is 1965. And later she got her Master of Arts in Theology in 1969. In all these places, she got honors, she got distinction. She performed very well. Now, I want us to talk about how she made a sacrifice and how she sacrificed her teenage to support her father, who was not very rich, but she had other children to educate. And there she is as a firstborn. She also wanted to co-parent her father's or parents' children, which shows she began very early to show responsibility. She demonstrated responsibility in all her life. Even this minute in 2023, when she is almost 90, she is still working and doing great things to promote human welfare. At one time, she spoke to us when we were students at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, Pietermaritzburg, South Africa. And she told us that even if she may not have biological children with Odupe or whoever, she is actually the mother of every one of us, even us here talking. She brought us up academically. She is a mother, intellectual mother, spiritual mother, social mother, mother of responsibility to this very minute. Oduyoye, who claims that every position she has held in public life has almost always been by invitation, further claims that she made a sacrifice as a teenager, while her father assured her that God opens doors for people who care about the well-being of others. Thus, instead of going for the sixth form or Form 6 or advanced level in 1953 and 1954, she decided to go for a teacher's training college so that she could be able to provide for her younger sisters, while her parents went to Britain so that her father could complete his Bachelor of Divinity or BD studies in London. So she had to train as a teacher very early because it would take a few years rather than advance to A level and waste more time so that she could take care of her siblings. Mercy Oduyoye's father, a Methodist minister or a cleric, had been interested to pursue a BD for some years without much success. And now the opportunity comes, she had to ask her daughter to sacrifice her academic ambitions to get a short course training so that she could help her take care of her younger sisters or their younger children. This was his father's opportunity, and Mercy was the eldest child, as I've noted. This meant that she had family responsibility at an early age and went to university as a mature student, having taught 5 years after her 2 years teacher training. She sat for her 3 principal subjects. That is what we used to call in Kenya during the 7-4-2-3 system, which I went through. When we finished Form 4, we had to go to Form 5 and 6. We used to call it A level, where you took only 3 crustacean subjects that are related. Personally, I took English, literature, I took history, and I took religion. So they were called 3 principal subjects. That is, it used to be called advanced level, or from 1 to 4 used to be called O levels, or ordinary levels, or A levels meant advanced level, which is, the latter was actually a pre-university. I don't think we have a very advanced education as the case of A level. To this minute, I still revere A level. It's a turning point to me as a person. But she did her A levels via private studies. So she booked the exam and went on to pass very well. She later obtained her intermediate Bachelor of Divinity, London, after 2 years in the Department of Divinity at the University of Ghana, Legon. So there was an arrangement between the University of Ghana, Legon, with London, so that she got a Bachelor of Divinity from London rather than the University of Ghana. 2 years after, she went on to get another degree, Bachelor of Arts in Religious Studies, from the same department, after it was transformed from the previous divinity of religion to reflect Ghana's multi-religious status. The first door opened for her when the university sent her to Cambridge University for postgraduate studies. In an interview that I conducted when I emailed her and we were chatting via email, she told me, or she revealed to me, that she never considered herself, she never at any one time considered herself a church leader. But she has always seen people viewing her as such because of the contribution she made to the church, somehow as an outsider matrix of sorts. For the only formal position that she has held is serving as a conference lay preacher's secretary for Methodist Church, Nigeria, MCN, where she was teaching at the University of Ibadan were Professor Bolaji Idowu, another celebrated African scholar. Professor Bolaji Idowu was the head of Department of Religious Studies, and that is where she also taught. And later, Oduyoye became the head of the Methodist Church of Nigeria. Mercy Amba Oduyoye has, however, worked with church leaders and observed their leadership styles, thereby emulating some, and subsequently, she has always tried not to acquire the traits of some of those whom she did not admire. In her confessions through that email interview, though I've met her in person way back in 2003 when she spoke to us, a student in Pietermaritzburg, she likes to be forthright but gentle and conciliating. She feels more at home when lifestyles are simple and people matter more than winning arguments and having her own way. So hers is not to win, but to ensure that the bigger picture wins. In other words, she displays a spirit of selflessness, not selfishness. So her way is not necessarily to win the argument, but to get people to the right place. So you can see, even if she says she has never considered herself as a church leader, despite working as the first African woman Deputy General Secretary of World Council of Churches, the first African woman, and other things, and leading in the Methodist Church in Nigeria, being the secretary of the conference. She has never formally considered herself a church leader, though writing, and she has published a lot about church, how church can be improved upon, and how religious leaders in the church should be. She has never extolled herself. Rather, she has always found herself humbling herself to the extent of almost thinking that she is not the leader. Yet she is actually the de facto leader who has mothered masses and masses of people across the world, and Africa in particular. Now, allow me now to talk about her responsible leadership. How does she display responsible leadership? Ubuntu. Where is Ubuntu, or humanness, maturity in leadership? Where is her responsibility? Mercy Oduyoye's image of responsible leadership is seen in the advice of Jesus to his disciples. That is, if one wants to be counted great, he or she must be a servant. That's Mark 10:44-45. For her, leadership is about foot washing, enabling the tired and dejected to feel refreshed again, so that they can pick themselves up and contribute to develop a caring, compassionate, and a just community. In Mercy Oduyoye's view, a leader is a fountainhead. A leader is a fountainhead, one who nourishes and inspires, one who is able to respond to the needs and the moods of the community, one who inspires others to give out their very best to the community, while making the best of their God-given talents and graces. Leaders are always found everywhere, where you find more than one person, groups of friends, and homes, right through to the nations and groups of nations. You find leaders there. It is obvious then that what it takes to lead effectively will lead on the nature of the group, the context, and the challenges. A person who should be counted as a good leader is one who is positioned as an enabler, as a mentor and collaborator, respecting the humanity of others, enabling, encouraging, and appreciating their agency. In her well-considered view, in Mercy Oduyoye's considered view, Africa needs persons who have a vision for the continent, people whom we all can be proud of, and persons who have the courage to share such a vision and attract collaborators. That is people who will inspire masses of people to do something that will take us forward rather than backward. People who help us, encourage us to appreciate the urgency or to understand the role we have, the big role we have to society, to humanity, and God. Another thing to consider about Amba Oduyoye is her place in the ecumenical movement. You know what ecumenical movement means. Ecumenical movement is unity of churches, a movement of uniting churches. That you find in the words of Jesus in the book of John 17 when he says, I pray that you be one. It starts from there, that all may be one. Oduyoye became formally associated with the ecumenical movement very early before she met Professor Oduyoye, her husband, in 1965, when she helped host a conference of the World Student Christian Federation, WSCF, at the University of Ghana, Legon. And the theme was Christian presence in the academic world. That was the theme of the conference of 1965, where she played a very critical role. And of course, WSCF, or World Student Christian Federation, is a global thing and ecumenical meeting of many churches, many cultures, many people, all gender. By then, she had just come back from graduate studies from Cambridge University, UK. Later, she was to be appointed the president of the federation. This gave her an entry point to the world of young Christians in the tertiary institutions. She also got to understand the issues that they were espousing in 1967 to 1970, especially on matters to do with justice. At one stage, she became the Youth Education Secretary, which was an appointment by the World Council of Churches, World Council of Christian Education, WCCE, and the World Council of Churches, that is WCC. When the WCCE, or the World Council of Christian Education, later merged with the World Council of Churches, or WCC, she was able to work directly in the Department of Education of the World Council of Churches with Paulo Freire, the famous Brazilian educator who wrote the book, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, 1970. She was also able to travel all over the world, familiarizing herself with out-of-school education for young people. Between 1970 and 1974, she was the youth secretary for the All Africa Conference of Churches, AACC, and her WCC youth work period was translated on to the continent. In this new position as a youth secretary for AACC, or All Africa Conference of Churches, she was able to learn a lot about Africa, and she got the opportunity to see many of the countries through the eyes of the young people. From 1975 to 1987, while on the faculty of the University of Ibadan, Nigeria, she did a lot moderating meetings, participating in many and learning several leadership skills and roles in the ecumenical movement on the job, so to say. That the most challenging moderating work that she did was a section in the WCC Nairobi during the Nairobi Assembly that set up the program on dialogue with people of other faiths. Interreligious living remains a challenge that Africa will do we have to do well to manage wisely. Yeah, in other words, what I'm saying is interreligious agenda that she had in Nairobi, working for World Council of Churches, she found it a very hard task, or an area we have not in Africa done it well, because people are in their denominational cocoons and people are not able to get out of it. And so she, in her view, in my interview with her, she told me that that's in an area which requires more efforts, more dedicated people to work in that area of interreligious faith or living or dialogue or something. As a Deputy General Secretary of the World Council of Churches between 1987 to 1994, of course they are based in Geneva, Switzerland, working with the program planning and coordination, was a school for acquiring sensitivity and the skills of listening and honoring expertise of many. That moment gave her a chance to listen more, learn more, plan more, and think deeply. Even after completing her term, the World Council of Churches remained her school for sharpening and keeping up the skills for working with the people, many of whom have more expertise than her. It is Mercy's initiative that brought into being the so-called the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians. As the initiator of the so-called Circle, the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians, she has been instrumental in calling attention to African women's theology and serves the Circle as a co-founder, as a coordinator. She has served it as a coordinator of its study commissions. Remember, it is in the 1970s that she started dreaming up the Circle. She says, that's the time I started dreaming up the Circle. Because what is the Circle? When we talk of the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians, it is a group of women, the 72 women who met at Accra, Ghana in 1989 when she called the leading women scholars in Africa. She assembled them in Ghana, where she told them about her dream of starting this Circle. They called it the Circle because it means not every woman in Africa is concerned with a movement that would empower women to higher heights. So they called it the Circle, meaning it's a Circle of concerned women, meaning there are women who are already caged by patriarchal socialization and they don't want to annoy it, they don't want to hurt it, they want to remain under those cocoons of the inferiority of women. So they started this Circle as a movement to empower women. So she was, however, able to initiate it in 1989, as I've said, and later coordinated it for 7 years, which she described as a labor of love, laboring for love, of love, something where she was straining but out of passion. She was passionate about it, and she now left it to other people who have read it. You have heard Isabel Piri, she has read it. Musimbi Kanyolo has read it. Quite a number, Furata Moyo from Malawi has also read it. The movement of women empowerment for scholars, women scholars, particularly in the region, she's the one who started it, and she left it to us, and it is still there, a very strong body, encouraging the girl child and the women in scholarship. They are encouraged by this Circle of Women Theologians, the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians. She notes that it was teamwork and had much practice for it. In summary, and as we have noted above, Amba Oduyoye's professional services to the ecumenical movement, totaling 13 years, consists of 3 years as Youth Education Secretary of the World Council of Churches, 3 years as Youth Secretary of the All Africa Conference of